This next one I actually have in my garden, and I use it quite a bit from time to time, which is magnesium sulfate, aka Epsom salt. Talk to us about that.
Oh, it's a good one. It is, out of all the mineral sulfates, it actually has the highest solubility, and so a little goes a long way. And typically, when it comes to, medicinal crops and even heavy flowering fruiting crops, if you're doing, like for me, when I do all of my home grow stuff, I love to use magnesium sulfate as a foliar spray. I like to use a tablespoon per gallon, and the reason is this: because it's really, really soluble. You have four major soil cations. It's going to be calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. We always want sodium as low as possible. But all the other three, all those four things, they're antagonistic to each other. So they need to be in balance so they can be absorbed by the plant in the right ratios. And when we're talking about Epsom salt, it's very soluble, and it can cause antagonisms with calcium and potassium. So over applying it through a soil or through watering it in, unless you're doing what I do with the agronomy and you're doing soil analytics, doing soil testing, saturated paste testing, leaf tissue testing, and whatnot, if you're just a home grower, you can kind of avoid that situation that you might put yourself in by locking out some of that other stuff by over applying too much, right? Because you might not know how much you need to be applying. If you just use it as a foliar spray, you can avoid that. So you can avoid that negative chemical interaction that would happen within the soil, those antagonistic relationships that could potentially be there with the misuse, and you can just use a tablespoon per gallon and spray it on the plants, and it's going to have great efficacy. Now, one of the things I do have to mention, that whenever you're doing an application using a spray, that you need to start with clean water, something like reverse osmosis or distilled water, because if you're not using clean water, you could have a lot of sodium or a lot of bicarbonate, or your pH could be really, really high, and so it decreases the efficacy of what you're trying to apply. So when you're using clean water, you have a greater efficacy. The plant's not there's not any kind of negative reactions, antagonisms that are actually happening because the water has high boron in it, or this or that or whatnot. So
tablespoon per gallon is a little bit different for me. I used to use a teaspoon per gallon, so it looks like I need to up my dose a little bit there. I always use it as a foliar as well.
And you can do it a couple times a week even too. You can go and spray, and one day, wait another day, spray again. I wouldn't recommend doing more than 3 times a week, but that is a really, really great way. And one of the things that I see pretty consistently across the board, and your leaf margins, they'll start to show a little shadowing in between the veins, where there'll kind of be a slight discoloration. That's not the very first sign, but the leaf petiole will actually start to turn purple. That's a good sign. So if you start there, you can do your foliar sprays, and you can kind of avoid all that. And the thing about magnesium is it's a photosynthetic element. So at the center of every chlorophyll molecule is going to be magnesium, right? So you need it for chlorophyll, for the plants to photosynthesize. So it can be a really limiting factor, especially in veg. If you do not have enough magnesium, everything else is going to slow down because your plant doesn't have the ability to photosynthesize or create more chlorophyll in the chloroplast.
And you're never doing a foliar in flowering, is that right?
Up to about week 2 you can, during the bolting, but I try not to spray anything after we've had flower sets. The last thing that I spray is usually around day 21. I'll do my pruning on my plants that need to be done, prune up all the stuff, whether it's, medicinal herbs or even, tomatoes and stuff like that, peppers. I prune all that stuff up, all that crap on the bottom, so the energy is at the fruiting sites. And I'll spray trichoderma and bacillus subtilis as a combination, and it has so many benefits. It has benefits as a soil drench, but as a foliar application. That's the last thing I spray, and that's usually for the prevention of things like botrytis and powdery mildew in crops. It helps suppress any type of leaf-borne pathogen, and then it also works as an endophyte. So it will penetrate inside of the plant cell, and it will help fight off any other type of pathogens. So we're basically, what we're doing is we're inoculating the plant endosphere and the phylosphere to basically outcompete other pathogens and kind of give that extra layer of protection.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrow at 15 to save on any of their products.